and really help them get through the whole mess of recruiting. It can be stressful, but also help them personally connect with college coaches. Um, so tonight we're going to talk about increasing your chances of being recruited and increasing your chances of finding the right fit for you. I'm going to share my screen here so we can kind of follow through with this. Um, this is a webinar setting, so if there are questions or you can't hear me or something, type it in the chat or the Q&A at the bottom. But any questions that come up, I'll be happy to answer them at the end. Or you can personally always set up a call with me and I'll answer questions and even evaluate your recruiting and give you some ideas and things like that. I'm happy to do that. So feel free to do that anytime. But again, it's a webinar setting, so if there are questions, type them in the chat or the Q&A at the bottom, and I'll get to those. So let's talk about recruiting for a little bit and increasing your chances. First off, like I mentioned before, I coached for a long time. It's a little bit, you know, uh, older picture now, I guess. My kids are a little bit older and playing a lot of soccer, and one's playing in ODP still. But had a lot of success as a coach, and I think recruiting was a big part of that. Being a successful recruiter, getting the right student athletes for you and your program and your school. Is a really important part of the process as a coach, but it's obviously a very important part of, the experience for you as a student athlete. All right. I'm going to say some things here that I think need to be said. I think people don't say a lot of things. They don't want to hurt feelings and things like that. But, and I'm not doing anything, no personal, critiques here, but most prospects think they are better than they are. All right. That's the truth of the matter. Most prospects, most kids that want to play in college, you know, think they're better than maybe the schools that are reaching out to them. Most of them think they should be getting Division II and Division I looks, and maybe that's not always the case. There are certainly some kids that get those, but they are. We'll talk about it momentarily. They're becoming harder to get. And college soccer is fantastic level at all levels. Now there's good Division I teams and there's bad Division I teams. And I've talked about this before, and I don't want to repeat things. But there's good Division III teams, there's bad Division III teams, all of that. But it's a really good level of play if you're playing in college. I think that that it's most of the time it's pretty darn good. But you need to target the right levels. You need to, you know, I have kids and I've seen kids that only reach out to the top Division I schools, and they're not good enough. And then they lose out on opportunities because they're not willing to even consider, you know, Division III or NAIA schools that are reaching out to them, or not even getting an interest at all because they only call Stanford or reach out to email Stanford and Clemson and Wake Forest and places like this, right? Don't self-sabotage your recruiting by thinking you're better than a certain level or better than Division III. It's getting really, really difficult. Recruiting has completely changed in the last 5 years. All right. And I do this for a living and I've seen the change, right? And I actually sat down with a Division I coach on Friday at a not a very good Division I program, not a lot of success at that program. And he was telling me, a kid that was two-time state player of the year is a senior. This is on the men's side. Two-time state player of the year, won 2 state championships. Called his school and said, and wanted to go there. And he basically had to tell the kid and the family he's not ready. And why is that? Well, they're recruiting 25-year-old former, people in the academy system in Europe who are transfers from Division II schools or going to come over and play and they're kind of not in the pro system anymore. So those players are ready to play, and it's just changed the game. It's a lot harder to find those spots, especially on the men's side. They want impact players, and there's a huge difference between an 18-year-old and a 25-year-old. Huge. I mean, it's strictly men and boys, right? Like at the end of the day, and I feel bad for kids in that system, but that coach is encouraging that player to take a gap year so he can grow as a player, grow physically a little bit, get stronger, so he can catch up with maybe a 25-year-old and things like that. So I'm going to talk about gap years in a moment, but this affects all levels. I think someone said it best. I was listening to a podcast, and ESPN analyst said it best. A lot of prospects that were Division I a few years ago might be Division II now, and Division II players might be Division III now, and down the line, right? Um, you know, that's a little bit more on the men's side, but it is affecting women's as well, because there is the transfer portal, and international recruiting is growing, and gap years are still a thing on the women's side. And it is just really hard for a freshman to actually play at all levels because you have to transition to play, get used to a new coach, a new style, a new team, and then you're up against potentially players that are a lot older, especially on the men's side. Maybe not as much on the women's side. But we'll talk about trends and in college soccer recruiting and how they're affecting things, both on men's and women's side through this little graphic and this little slide. The transfer portal is here to stay. Players are looking to get out of situations if they're not playing, or a Division I player might want to transfer. They're not happy at their school, or they want to go up a next to an even higher level Division I program. We're seeing a lot of players. I call it leveling up, right? You see players that want to move up to the next level. You see players that, the Division III player that wants to try Division I, and they had a really successful, year or two at Division III. They want to level up to Division II or Division I. We're seeing a lot of that. And so coaches would rather, again, maybe take a player who's got a few years of experience, even at a Division II or Division III level, versus maybe an incoming freshman who has to transition to a whole new thing. So that's one thing in the transfer portal. The other thing in transfer portal is obviously players who are unhappy with their situation. They want to go ahead and maybe they want to move down, because maybe you got a Division I player who's not playing much, and they're going to take roster spots from players at Division III schools. There's a lot of musical chairs happening. I call it musical chairs. And within those musical chairs, it's delayed a lot of things. One thing I will say is recruiting has gotten a little bit later. Now you're still having your top players, as juniors are really getting recruited pretty heavily by the top Division I schools. And junior recruiting happens at all levels, but in particular, on the women's side, junior year is really, really important. Is where most of the recruiting happens, actually, on the women's side, even at Division III and NAIA and places like that. There's a lot of things happening there. However, I'm seeing a lot of things happen after the first of the year in senior year that are opening spots. So the transfer portal is after the season, so the fall season for college. So the transfer portal is about a 3-week period after each school is done with their season. And so when we get to end of December, and that's the holidays, so you're looking at early January, we're seeing now coaches are starting to really have openings, and now they're looking for players to fill those openings. And they look at the transfer portal, but they also look, okay, now the transfer portal musical chairs happened, and now there might be an opening for an incoming freshman. I've had 8 players in the last 2 weeks commit to programs. 9. I had one commit yesterday, and they're all seniors, except for 2, and they were juniors. But most of that, you would think this is kind of late in the game for recruiting. It's not. I think there's going to be, and it's boys and girls. It's happening on both sides. A little bit more on the boys' side, but it's definitely happening on both sides. We're seeing a lot of gap years situations. I'll talk about gap years for a minute. A lot of, especially on the boys' side, because the transition is harder on the boys' side. Why is the transition harder on the boys' side to go play college soccer? Because there's more of those older, you know, international type players in the system. On the women's side, there's more traditional college age players, so you're not playing up against a 25-year-old very often. But it can happen, and it does happen. I've seen that happen too. But we're starting to see a lot of players decide to go in a gap year program, which is a program where you can either go study and play, um, or just play at a high level, sometimes in foreign country. I work with gap year programs in Spain and Argentina and England, and I have friends in those places that run gap year programs where they help prepare kids for the next level, so they can come back to the U.S. and be in a better situation to be recruited because they've grown as a player. That's happening more and more and more. We're also starting to see Division I coaches encourage gap years. That player I was telling you from the coach I was meeting with, uh, he was encouraging a gap year for that player so he could grow and become a better player so that he could come back and be more ready and not burn a year of eligibility just sitting on the bench. So we're starting to see a lot more kids take gap years in hopes maybe they're going to get to another level, and not, maybe not play Division III, right? So like maybe a kid's getting recruited by a lot of Division IIIs. We're starting to see kids that know some of those higher level players potentially taking gap years. Now, gap years aren't cheap, and there's no scholarships for them, and somebody's making money for them. So, and not all gap year programs are created equal. I promise you that. So making sure, you're picking one that's not a scam or anything like that. I'm sending the player to a couple of my friends in Spain and their program, and it's fantastic. They send kids back to the U.S. in better situations most of the time. So, another trend is giant rosters. We're seeing a lot of schools, a lot of small private schools are enrollment driven, even at Division I. So we're starting to see uh, larger rosters. Maybe schools are mandating larger rosters. They want maybe 40 people on a roster. I'm seeing Division I programs on the women's side, usually more on the women's side than the men's, at Division I with 40 players on a roster. Now, if they only play 11 and the rules are going to change a little bit next year on substitutions, like once you leave a game, you can't go back in, kind of like the professional level. That's going to change with a lot of things. And so now they might only play 15, 16 players, and there's 40 players on a roster. There's players on these rosters that will never play. Um, and there are no, JV teams at the Division I level typically, and those types of things. So are you just a practice dummy on a roster, or are you a player that's actually getting in the game? So that's happening on the women's side at the Division I level more than the men's. Partially because a lot of times the women's soccer roster balances out football in terms of equality and things like that. So that's one thing we're seeing. But we see giant rosters on these enrollment driven schools for men and women too, where we're seeing 40, 50, 60, 70 players on a roster, and JV teams and things like that. And a lot of times, they are recruiting you. They want you to go there, but sometimes you got to be beware of situations where they're recruiting you just to fund the better players, right? They're just going to have a JV team to fund the varsity team that's full of international players. I see that a lot. I see programs that do that. I shy my kids away from those programs. I know which ones they are, which ones they aren't, but That's it's understanding that when you're getting into the situation. So look at rosters, look at the type of people that are on the rosters, look at the size of rosters, look at how many seniors they have, those types of things when you're looking at things. And then I've mentioned it before, the international older player influx is getting bigger and bigger. At one point it was about, a third of men's soccer players and about 18, 19% of women's soccer players were international. It's starting to grow even more than that. So look at rosters. If they're a team that is fully international, it's going to be a hard place to go. So don't be worried about what others think. Do you? All right. One of the things that drives me bonkers is I feel like people are concerned about the social media posts about where they're going to post that I'm committed to, right? They don't want to post about being committed to a school that no one's heard of, or, a lot of times it's the pressure of, hey, I'm the best player in this area. Most people think I should be playing Division 1, and I'm only getting recruited by Division 3 schools. And if I post that, people are gonna be like, what the heck? Or they're gonna be asking me questions. So I don't want to post that. So I delay it, or I don't go. I try to force my way on a roster somewhere else, and we'll talk about that momentarily. Like I keep trying for higher levels, but the right fit's sitting right in front of your face, but you don't want to do it because you're worried what other people think. Um, it's a huge problem, to be totally honest with you. I see a lot of kids that are so concerned about what that one-time post will be on social media, um, where instead of what the experience of college is going to be, and finding a great fit opportunity for them. So please, please, please understand that college coaches are the only opinions that matter. In the recruiting process, at least, they're the ones that want you. They're the ones that are the ones they don't care, what you did and things like that. In terms of all conference and all state and all that kind of thing, they recruit players that they think can make a difference. And to be honest, social media, I think it's the worst. I'll be honest. I don't even do it. Social media only adds to the pressure. All right, you look on social media and see all these players say, "Hey, I'm so excited to commit to this program and this school." It can be a problem, and so then you feel the pressure that you have to do the same thing, and that's not the case. And the other thing about it is, I see a lot of people think they have to use social media to get recruited. Doesn't help your recruiting. I'm telling you, straight up. I have not talked to a coach, and I talk to coaches every day that goes on Instagram or Twitter and looks at players' videos or um, does any recruiting from social media in soccer. Maybe in some other sports, doesn't happen in soccer. They want to be emailed. We're going to talk about that. Social media might actually even hurt your recruiting for certain reasons, right? Because then you start seeing people post they like your coaches are still going to like your posts because they need to brand their college. They need to brand their program. Doesn't mean they're interested. I get here, hey, this coach liked my post. And I'm like, man, it doesn't mean anything. And they're like, no, yeah, it does. I'm like, did they call you? Did they email you? Did they text you? If they really liked you, they would do that. They want you to like them back and brand their program. It also hurts your recruiting by just wasting time, right? You don't need to do it. It's that people post these posts that, hey, I'm playing in this tournament this weekend. Come watch me play, and they put their schedule on it. Coaches don't look at that. I'm telling you, it's not happening. So social media, I know people love it, but I'm a hater. All right, so you need persistent, authentic outreach to coaches. Email is still the preferred initial outreach. Coaches don't want to be texted because from a number they've never seen. They don't want to be bothered that way. They want to be able to respond at their own time. A lot of people think that they should get an answer right away from a coach. Hey, I emailed this coach yesterday. They haven't gotten back yet. It might take weeks. They're busy. They got lots of things going on. That coach might be folding the pennies, getting ready for practice and doing the laundry and doing a whole list of other things too. So coaches do a ton of things depending on what level they're at. But you need to be persistent with coaches, but avoid being annoying, right? Reach out when you have something to share. Reach out when you have a new video. Reach out with your game schedule. Reach out if you're going to be in their area, and target right fit opportunities. You know, and that's really important. Let coaches know your schedule when you're going to be in their area. Hey, coach, I'm playing at the college down the road from your school next week or in 2 weeks, and I'd love for you to come evaluate me. There's a chance right there. I had a player last year that um, she was playing in a few tournaments for high school, which is coming up, and she sent some coaches, "Hey, I'm going to be playing in your area this weekend. I'd love you to come watch me play." Every coach she emailed showed up at the games, so it does happen. Um, or I have a player this week that's setting up spring break visits. Um, I don't know if the level is going to be the right situation, but he emailed a bunch of coaches, "Hey, I'm going to go on this spring break. I'm going to be coming through your area on these 2 days. Would you be interested in meeting with me?" He probably hit up about 7 or 8 coaches. He's gotten 2 responses from Division I coaches that said, "Yeah, we'd love to go on a tour, set you up." He's a pretty good video situation, but they're still going to want to see him play before they go down the road with him further. But he's going to get on campus. He's going to be in front of these coaches, and they're going to eventually want to come watch him play. And so he's opened the door by doing that. It's a little more of an aggressive approach, right? It's not just, "Hey, here's my stuff. Reach out to me if you're interested." It's, "Hey, I'm going to be coming to your campus or your area. I'm going to tour campus one way or the other. Would you like to meet with me?" Coaches like kids who are interested in their school, and you're going to actually show up. They might spend 15 minutes with you. They might spend a whole day with you. So it's worth the risk in my eyes. You can't be afraid of rejection or no response. You're going to get a lot of no response in in recruiting. If coaches aren't interested, they get so many emails that they just don't respond. And they don't want to let you down, to be totally honest. They don't want you to like, "Oh, that coach at that school is a jerk because he told me I'm not good enough to play there." They're not going to go down that road with you. So just don't be afraid of rejection. You might even hear no. We're not looking, or we're not interested, or you're not the right fit for us. You got to be okay with that. Be resilient, and eventually, if you don't hear back after multiple attempts, 3, 4, 5 attempts, right? Be okay with moving on. And it might be your dream school, um, but maybe your dream school isn't the right match from both sides of the fence. It's not from the coach's side too. So you got to have a lot of options. Your goal should be to have a lot of options in the end, so that you can pick what the best fit is for you. If you have 5 schools that want you, out of those 5, which one's the best one for you? Being a good communicator is key, right? You're going to go on visits. You're going to need, coaches are going to see how you communicate. The players are going to want to see how you communicate. You're on a visit, and the coaches are going to ask the players what they thought of you. I'll give you a quick story. I was on a college visit with my son last week, and he's looking at potentially running some cross country in college. And we got to the visit, and he was meeting with the team before their practice, and the coach said, "The team's going to interview you." I mean, my son's eyes, got really big, like, "Oh man, what's this mean?" Right? And the kids just threw all kinds of questions at my son for 10 minutes, right? If he didn't have answers, they're gonna be like, "Oh, this kid's kind of a dud. We don't know if we want him on our team," right? But he had really good answers, and he had a lot of fun with it. The kids had a lot of fun with it. But being a good communicator is key. Plus, he had a really good conversation with the coach, and I just walked away and let my kid do it. And you know, I'm pretty sure their desire for him went up after that because he did a good job. Um, and not afraid to take a chance, right? Don't be afraid to take. I'm not saying that you can't go to Clemson or Stanford or those types of things, right? Um, but you can take a chance and reach out to coaches. Why not, right? There's nothing hurt by reaching out to a coach and saying, "Hey, coach, I'm interested in your school. Here's my video. I'd love you to come watch me play." And heck, maybe something happens, right? Maybe it doesn't, but it's okay to take a chance. but eventually you have to have some realistic outreach too. And you got to understand your level is typically the level that's reaching out to you, right? So people ask me all the time, well, what level do you think I am? Well, who's reaching out to you? Are Division threes reaching out to you? Then you're probably a Division three player, But right now it's a little bit weird because a lot of Division three kids are getting reached out to by Division three now, but it might open up after the transfer portal musical chairs in January. After their senior year, but a lot of the juniors are getting talked to right now. They're just getting the Division three outreach. Division three is usually going to be first to the party. They don't really live in the transfer portal world like the Division one schools and Division two schools. So understand that. One thing I forgot to mention, even at Division three and NAIA and Division two, the international thing's going crazy, especially on the boys' side. I know like the College Conference of Illinois and Wisconsin, which is a good Division three conference. I think every school in that conference has gone to Europe this year to try to find players. It's kind of crazy. So that was off topic, on topic, but I just wanted to throw it out there. Um, let's talk about there it is. What is your right fit? All right. We kind of started talking about that. How can you save time, energy, and money on this process? Um, one of the things I do is by targeting right fits, I think you can save that time, energy, and money. If you know the priorities you're looking for, what's the right fit for you academically? What do you want to study? Is that going to help you get to where you want to be? What type of school are you looking for? Size, um, social, financial, how much is it going to cost you to go there? Those things matter. Is it out of state? It's going to cost you, a lot more maybe than an in-state or those types of things. Know if you can play at that school. I know I can play there right away. Coach has told me that. I've seen him play. I'm pretty confident I can play there right away. Or is it a big stretch? Or is it a stretch and it's a maybe, like maybe down the road, that might happen. I use my son as reference in his cross country, but he had a coach challenge the Division one coach the other day. But maybe, right? If you drop 30 seconds your senior year, I'm interested. You're close, but you're not quite there. You're a maybe. Those types of things, knowing that, or know if you have no chance playing there, right? Their roster's full internationals, or they only recruit kids from the national team, or those types of things. Know your chances of being admitted. Is that school got a 7% acceptance rate? Is it, crazy hard to get into? Can you get in there with your scores, your ACT scores, and your grades, and those types of things? Knowing if that's important. Knowing what your financials might look like. Having have a serious talk with your parents about, hey, what can we afford? What's are we willing to take out how much in loans? Um, what is a right fit opportunity for you financially? So when you start going down that road, you're not reaching out to schools that might be way out of your league in that regards. Um, I've kind of mentioned it before, know if the school is what you're looking for academically and socially. And in the end, if you do all that, you're going to have a lot of options so you can decide. I like to see people have 5 or 6 options. So in the end, they can say, out of these 5 or 6, this one ticks the most boxes. And I have a whole worksheet on that for when the people I work with get through that process, and help them decide on that. ID camps and showcases. I'm not a huge ID camp kind of guy, or showcases for that fact. I think I'll talk about it real quick, but I think there's so many college showcases, which is where a team goes and plays in front of. They say they're going to have all these college coaches at these events, right? There's a lot of watered down events now, because there are so many of them. So you got to be careful there. If your team's going to some of these events, the coaches you might want to get in front of aren't going to may not be there, right? I had a player go to Las Vegas this past week to a showcase, and he said none of his target schools were there. Well, I knew that going in because he was going to Las Vegas and he wants to go to school on the East Coast to some high-end academic schools and things like that. Um, so each showcase is a little bit different, but you still have to reach out to coaches and tell them your schedule and tell them you're going to be there. And when you go to those events, you have to make the most of them. You have to maximize the opportunity. You got to let coaches know, especially coaches that are nearby. That's low hanging fruit. Like within a couple hours, they can come over, maybe watch you play, or at least know you're playing there. They might change their mind and make them come over, but you need to do some work to let coaches know you're playing in those events. But I don't know that all of them are worth it, right? People are flying all over the country to go to these showcases. Well, if you fly to Virginia for a showcase and you want to go to school in Iowa, well, none of the Iowa colleges are going to go to that showcase in Virginia. So is it worth it? I don't know. Like all the time, it's not always worth it. Sometimes they do, like these huge ECNL events. We'll talk about those in a second. Seems like college coaches are focusing on a certain, couple areas. And, I'll be blunt is, they're looking at MLS next on the boys side. That's their first area. Then they look at ECNL and then you have to do your work to get in front of coaches if you're not in those leagues, especially at the, like Division 1 level. On the girls side, it's ECNL and then the girls academy. But there's other groups. Um, PRO is another acronym. That's a pretty good level. There's a lot of college coaches that go to some of those events. But I still have players from all different levels that are landing at that don't play in those types of leagues that are landing at really good opportunities because they're finding alternative routes. A lot of it's me reaching out to those coaches. To be totally frank with you, I'm reaching out to coaches for those kids and saying, hey, here's a kid that you should take a look at. They're kind of unknown. They don't play in that league, but they're worth a look, right? And that can help make something happen in that regards. Going to ID camps can help potentially if they're good ones. A lot of times, like and I'm not a huge ID camp guy in terms of, hey, you need to go to these to make it happen. There's a lot of pressure. As you get into recruiting, you start sending emails, you're going to get invited to ID camps. That's it. And it's going to make it, some of them make it sound like you have to go, or some of them make it sound like you're getting recruited and you're really not. They just want your money for the camp, right? And so there's a lot of I go almost scams going on, right? Money grabs, if you will, right? Where and even college coaches are in on it, right? They're trying to make money for their assistant coaches who don't make much, or they have an assistant coach on staff who only gets paid by camps. Um, so you have to be very cautious, and you can spend a ton of money going to camps. The camps cost money. You might have to go stay overnight in hotels. You might have to fly there. Be very cautious here, but it can help. I've seen players who have gone to camps and put their stamp on a camp and gotten recruited. I've had players that have done it, but they've done the homework beforehand. And hey, this is a chance I want to take. It's a risk I want to take, right? I had a couple players this uh, winter go to a couple Division 1 camps, um, put their stamp on it, and got offers um, straight from the camp. And then they saw video and things like that. But they did their homework in advance. They knew it was kind of a stretch. They had other opportunities as backup plans, and made some things happen. But again, you can't go to all of them. Like some of them, like I said, some of them, there's a coach that's making it sound great all the time. There's a few schools out there that do a fantastic job of making every kid in the country think they're getting recruited by them, and they have to go to that camp, and it's just a money grab. They don't even recruit from that camp. That stuff happens. So, which camps do I target? That's to be decided, right, based on your situation. I have a camp worksheet. I'll send it out when my follow up to this. You guys can happy to have it. It helps you decide what camps are important to you, and based on have you talked to that coach, the costs, having a budget, um, all those things make it picking camps is important. Having the right advocates and proper advice. Is your club or high school coach connected? Are they somebody that can call coaches and a college coach is actually going to listen to them, or is it a if they do call a college coach? I've seen this the opposite, where a coach actually hurts the process, right? Sometimes a coach that doesn't know um, the college game that well might call a college coach and say, "Hey, I got this kid, they're awesome," and they're not good enough, or a college coach doesn't trust them, and it becomes problematic, right? So we don't want that to happen either. But if you do have a college coach, there's some high school coaches out there that coached college or know people or have are respected, and club and high school coaches that are in that situation. Utilize them if you can. I would definitely ask your coach if they feel comfortable and how they might be able to help you in that regards too. Do you have someone that can help you move to the front of the line, right? And get looks, right? That's what I do, really, to be honest. I call coaches and tell them about kids and say, hey, I want you to take a look at this player. I think they'd be a good fit for you based on X, Y, Z. I think they're worth a look. I never say that player is the right player for that program, but I tell them they're worth a look, and a lot of times that opens the door. Recruiting services. Not all are created equal. Yes, I run a recruiting service, and I'm putting that out there, right? I think I do things a lot differently. I'm personalized. I have a small book of business, small group of people I can work with. And it's real help where I'm answering questions, I'm guiding correctly, I'm reducing stress. I even help save money on colleges at the end, and help you get through this whole everything from camps to calling coaches on your behalf. But there's things like, and I'll say it, NCSA, right? High pressure sales. If you've played in a tournament somewhere, you've signed up for NCSA and didn't even know it. And they call you and they text you randomly. And I have so many players that work with me worked with that used NCSA too, and it didn't help them. And they paid all this money to work with NCSA, which is a digital service. It's all self help, where they give you different things. They tell you what to do, but there's nobody to call. There's nobody to ask a question to. There's nobody's going to be real with you. They're just going to say, "Yeah, keep emailing, keep doing that." Something might happen, and they actually sell your names to camps. Um, so then you get inundated with camps from college coaches too, and those things start happening. It's a vicious cycle. Yeah, I said it. And I know Iowa soccer uses them because that's just what happens. So I'm gonna say it. Um, so find a service if you are going to use helpful service. Find somebody that knows what they're doing, and be very diligent. Don't fall to the high pressure. Lastly, go where you are wanted and loved. Don't try to force your way on a roster or into a program or a school that doesn't really want you. You're kind of just forcing your way onto it, and you're going to be the last player on the bench, or it might not be a good fit. Those people who go to schools that want them and love them tend to have way better experiences on and off the field. And they get better jobs and they get, afterwards, and they have a better connection to the school and they had a great experience, and they they want to tell the world about how great their experience was too. So it's certainly uh go where you love. I can't say that enough. If there's questions, you can pop them in the Q&A right now. If you want to reach out to me individually, you can do that. Send me an email, send me a text. We can sign up for a time to set up a Zoom call where I answer more questions and tell you a little bit more about what I do. There's no pressure on any of that. If anyone's coming to Dubuque for the ODP stuff on the weekend, I'm going to set up some times where people can meet with me. I live right down the street, so that's definitely an option. I can set up a half hour with you and answer any questions and find out what you're looking for a little bit, things like that. So I'll send out an email about that as well. But appreciate you jumping on today. If there are questions, I'll stick around for a few, and we'll go from there. Hope ODP cycle is going well. I know high school season's kicking off here soon, so good luck to everybody with that. And I'll be out and about with that as well. I'm coaching a high school team this spring at Dubuque Senior, so you're up against us, say hi. Other than that, thanks for joining me tonight. I'll stick around for a minute or two in case someone has any questions.